You better check yourself before you break yourself. You better check yourself before you break yourself.
If we can never find sin to confess, then we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. 1 John 1:18. Good morning, y'all. Good afternoon. Good evening, whatever time of the day you're listening to this or watching the video. This is Check Yourself with Harley. And today's episode is called Why Do I Gotta Check Myself? And this is actually not meant to be the first episode. It just so happened that this is how it ended up to be. I had last night around 2:30 woke up because my husband's phone went off. It instantly made me angry. I have a really bad anger problem. So on a usual situation, I would either wake him up or I would grab the phone, and that could go a few different ways. We would probably argue, and then that argument would make us probably be mad for the rest of the week, frustrated, upset, angry. That would then be something that my little baby would have to deal with all of that energy from me. That's not fair to her. So, maybe you're thinking, well, why is the phone going off? It shouldn't be going off. That's the reason why you probably need this episode, because that type of thinking is probably not bringing you any peace and probably creating conflict within your life that doesn't need to be there. When the phone went off, instead of doing what I would say I would do in the past, I took a moment and I said a quick prayer. That's what I do now. And when I say quick, I'm like, God, help me. And sometimes that's just as much as I give. Last night, when I did that, I felt like he wanted me to get up and write. And I laid for a moment and I kept thinking it's really late. I probably shouldn't get up and do that. But I said, okay, I'm going to be obedient. And I got up and I got on my computer and started writing. Writing became a form of therapy for me because I have an overactive mind and I feel like I can just empty my mind onto the page of wherever I'm writing. So I did. This is all that came to life was this whole episode. I feel like checking yourself can be hard, especially if you feel like you're in the right. However, that doesn't mean that you're fully right, because you could be still being part of whatever conflict, issue, whatever you want to call it, you're in. Whatever is preventing full peace in your life. So for me, I try to check myself at different times with different things. If I think maybe I did something or said something that I shouldn't have said, or I'm like thinking later and I'm like, oof, I was kind of wilding when I said that. I have a dear friend that I love so much, and I like to call her my voice of reason. I will call her and ask her like, hey, was I, and she'll let me know truthfully. That was the purpose of this show, was for you to have somewhere where you can be your own voice of reason. But I do now ask myself some like critical thinking questions. And I try to be unbiased when I do that. I take a step back and I place the situation, if it's me and another person, outside of me. Sometimes I place myself in that other person's shoes or, whatever. The reason why I started doing this is because words can't be taken back. Something you say to someone can stick with them for a very long time. I've had things that people probably do not even realize that they've said to me, that to this day, I still remember them clearly. Like I can hear them in my head being said to me. And they shaped things in my life. And they, at one point, even shaped who I was. What's even worse than words is actions. And by allowing yourself to think that you're always in the right and not seeing all sides of a situation, you can hurt someone that you love, someone that never did anything wrong to you, get the backlash. I have had it where my present at that time has had to pay for the mistakes of my past. And that is something I have to live with now. The shame of doing that. I have gone through the work to forgive myself, but there's some things that I haven't fully forgiven myself for. And like my kids, I used to let my anger get the best of me, and it was never their fault, and they were the ones that had to deal with the hurt or the pain of the little person inside me who didn't know how to handle having kids so young, a person who didn't know that they were dealing with mental illness. You know, I was just like on survival mode. But I also didn't know to stop and make sure, like, what am I about to, unleash onto someone that has nothing to do with what's really going on inside me. And even if they did, there's a better way to handle things. By checking myself, yes, I can never take those things back. I can never take back what I said. I can never unhurt the people that I've hurt. I can never take back the hurt that I caused my kids at that time. But one thing that I can do is try to prevent any further hurt in the future or anything more. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't mess up. It doesn't mean I'm not going to still maybe say something that could hurt my kids. As a matter of fact, I probably just did yesterday because I got into it with my kids too. I didn't try to compose myself before. And so now that's something I'm going to have to sit down, look back, think, and rectify. But I am thankful that at least now I have that self-awareness and I can try to correct it after I mess up. But if I had absolutely no awareness and I felt like I'm the mom, I'm right, and I don't have to check myself because these are some kids, then how am I going to progress? How am I going to be a better mom? Because none of us are born with a manual and we all have room for improvement. So last night, as I'm thinking about all these things, I was getting like the anger before I got up and started writing. I remember thinking to myself, why do I have to be the one to be the bigger person? Like, why do I have to check myself? I know that you are probably going to feel the same way, especially if someone's wronged you. Like, why do I have to look within myself? Why do I have to be the bigger person? Because I know lots of us have been told that. Why do I have to think about what I did wrong? But just like you and I have feelings and we're going through something, so is everyone else. Jesus knew that his disciples would betray him, yet he still loved them. He was perfect. He had no sin. I am not perfect, and neither are you. That's one reason why my faith is so strong, because someone that can love others regardless of their faults, when they themselves have no sin, no faults, there is something so beautiful in that. Because I like to think that I love my kids that way, and I do, but even I get angry at my kids, even with as much as I love them. I'd like to think I love my husband that way, but he makes me really mad. Sometimes I want to hurt him. That's because I'm not perfect. I'm human and I have feelings. Why can't we extend that same type of understanding to other humans? And I'm saying all humans, not just grown-ups, not just your kids, not just the people you love, but everyone around you. We all have free will. We do not control anyone else but ourselves. You cannot control your spouse. You can't control your friends. You can't control your boss. You cannot control the people around you. And shocking for some parents, you cannot control your kids because eventually they're not little anymore and they'll go off and there's things that you won't know that they're doing. You have to trust that you have done your very best and the rest is going to be in God's hands. I think as parents, we're all wrapping our heads around that. Like I mentioned, there's growth in every situation of our lives. There is no place for pride and self-righteousness. If you think that you have no room for improvement, even of those of us who deal with a lot, have had trauma in the past, or, you deal with mental illness like I do, whatever your situation is, we especially have to be more aware of our actions, and we should most importantly check in with ourselves, because we are hurt, and most often those who are hurt the most can actually cause the most pain. You have to learn to use the pain that you've experienced to grow compassion, as opposed to growing hurt and projecting it onto other people. So again, why do I check myself? Because I do not want to pass down to my grandkids the same hurt that my mom received. Because if my marriage fails, I want to rest assured that I did not just look at the pain that I would feel in whatever given situation, but I also thought about the pain that my husband was dealing with, or anything that he wasn't healed from himself. Because I want to forgive the sins of my mom, who at one time was also a young mom like me, and had to do a lot of things by herself, and she was probably scared and alone. I check myself because I am fully aware that I live in a world where maybe other people won't. I am also aware that there will be times where I will correct my behavior and others won't. I'll have to forgive people for wrongs that they've done to me that they have never given me a proper apology for, or will never apologize at all. I mentioned my faith is really strong. This came to me yesterday. I've never seen anywhere where it says God forces you to ask for forgiveness. I find that interesting because we've been given free will since the beginning of time. Now, I'm not a Bible expert, but there was a verse that came to me, the story of Peter. After Jesus was resurrected, Peter had betrayed him. He denied him 3 times. I'm going to read the verse. Jesus says, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" These referring to fish. They were eating breakfast. And he says, "Yes, Lord," Peter replied. "You know I love you." "Then feed my lambs," Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question. "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know I love you. Then take care of my sheep." Jesus asks him this for the 3rd time. I didn't write that part down. Peter responds for the 3rd time. I found it interesting that, like I mentioned earlier, Jesus knew that the disciples were going to betray him, and yet he still loved them. And I just mentioned, I've never seen somewhere where, God begs you or forces you to ask for forgiveness. And instead, he just asked if Peter loved him, actually redeemed him. Jesus asked him 3 times, did he love him? 3 times, Peter denied him. He never got an apology, at least not in this passage. Again, y'all, I'm not claiming to be a Bible expert. This is just what spoke to me at the time. Like I said, Jesus wasn't like, "Nah, bro, you denied me. We're done." He didn't come back and was like throwing it in his face. "You did me wrong." Didn't say he was fake. And I thought about how we place expectations on people, but do we put expectations on ourselves? So you want people to correct their behavior. You don't want people doing you wrong. You don't want people saying mean things to you. You don't want people mistreating you. But what about you? How are you treating people? What are you saying to people? How are you checking to make sure that you're not making other people pay for other people's sins against you? I don't want you to be so quick to answer that. And obviously, you're by yourself privately if you're watching this alone or wherever you are. But I want you to think about that and let that sink in. Think about the expectations that you place on other people. And then think of the expectations you place on yourself. I'm willing to bet a lot of us excuse ourselves, whether it's because we've been hurt or whether because maybe that specific person has hurt us in the past. So why should you try to be any better if they're not any better? If you're asking all of these things, you're asking the wrong thing, because this is about you. And as I mentioned, the only person that you can control in this world is you. So imagine if everybody took the time to think about all of their actions before they actually went through with them. I personally like to think that there would not be so much violence in the world, for one. There wouldn't be so much hurt. We wouldn't keep passing down these like generational things. The sense of our grandmother wouldn't have to be the sense of, the rest of our family, and so on. You can be the change. You will often see how you try to correct yourself. There's people always watching you. So keep that in mind. I know that we will all have remaining questions. I get that. I want you guys to understand this is a journey. This is only the first part. So focus on this part, the part of why. Check in. Your reason might be different from mine's. Mine's is anger and so on. I have a few of them. Yours could be different. Yours could be secluding yourself, withdrawing, isolation. It's a lot of different things that you could be doing as opposed to just kind of taking a moment and looking within. I want you guys to understand that yes, you're going to stumble. And yes, sometimes anger will take over or whatever your particular struggle is. I was blessed last night that I found some sort of peace and I was immediately able to recognize what was going on. But I can't always do that. And it's not always going to happen. There has been times where I have woken my husband up from the phone. And if it wasn't the phone, then it was something else. I argued with my kids yesterday. And instead of doing all of that, I should have pulled my big girl panties on, been the bigger person, and tried to handle the situation differently than the way that I did. I can't change what happened yesterday. I can do better next time and keep moving forward. Just because you check in with yourself, it's not that you're never going to mess up and everything's like, this is not a place where I'm encouraging for you to be perfect and then beat yourself up about it when you're not. I'm encouraging you just to try better. Work hard towards that. It's not easy. It's hard work, but you should do it because one day you'll get to a place where even if you mess up, you'll have peace within yourself knowing that you are trying. I used to beat myself up about the type of mother that I was. It's funny because as I was dropping my kids off yesterday after arguing with them, their dad said to me, "You look extremely calm." That was such a compliment because although I did not handle the situation the best way, I had peace in knowing that I am trying my very best and like truthfully, honestly trying. Not sitting here telling y'all that I am, not sitting there telling him that I am, but I know that I am trying. Every day I try a little bit, a little here and there. And that brings peace in my life. Not because I'm perfect, but because I am making progress every day. So in the end, to wrap it all up, check yourself because you're going to eventually find peace in knowing that you are doing your part and knowing that that is the only part you can control. Everyone else will continue to do as they want, as they are used to, as is comfortable, but you will find peace in knowing that you have done your part. That's it for today's episode, you guys. I hope that this word is something that you can take with you through this week. Think about the different situations where you just taking a moment to check what you say, what you do, your actions, what impact that has on you and others. Why do you do the things that you're doing? And how can you find a peaceful way to move forward? I want to thank you guys for being on here with me today, being so patient I've updated the schedule to Wednesdays instead of Monday. So I'll go ahead and post on Wednesdays. I will go ahead and do a check-in on Fridays on TikTok and Instagram. If you guys have any comments, suggestions, go ahead and drop them there. I believe that there's a send text message link on my podcast. I do also have a website. It's called Check Yourself with Harley. There are some resources on there and some of the information about the podcast. I'm also writing a blog for each episode. So if you want to go on there and read the blog, and that's kind of the like raw of the episode. Follow on IG, YouTube, all this stuff. Thank you guys again for being here with me. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If no one's told you today, you are loved, you are not alone, and you need to be proud of yourself, because if you've made it to the end of this episode, it just shows that you at least are open to doing something different. I love you guys, and I will see you on the next episode.